Hey, Navid, thank you so much for joining me today. How are you?
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, it's my pleasure. Let's go ahead and dive right in. So tell me, what is a virtual summit? That's all the rage these days. We keep hearing all about them. So what exactly is it?
Yeah, so it's actually typically how I explain it, at least. It's different ways to do summits, but it can be 20 to 50 interviews on an event. It's kind of a virtual event. It's like think about it as an offline conference, but you bring it online. It's pretty similar actually, but you can have it in presentation format or interviews. A handful of those speakers. It doesn't really have to be that many. If you have a smaller niche, can also be fewer speakers. That's also can be an online summit, virtual conference. There's many words for it. So I mean, you may have heard that virtual summit is just what I've been using, and my students, they refer to it also as virtual summits, obviously. And then you kind of place this. You have the interviews for free or the summit for free to sign up for, and then you have the limited availability on the interviews. So there will be 24 to typically 72 hours, and that's kind of how you create this urgency. So you get people to sign up for free, but you can also make money in the back end, which is pretty cool model. So you build your email list, but you also can generate revenue as well. And it's also more structured than a podcast. You will actually have more. I mean, I like to treat it as a course, so I have like a structure to it with themes or pillars or something like that, and phases. So people can actually follow through that rather than just a bunch of interviews thrown together. And how is it different from a webinar? Well, a webinar can just be kind of one presentation, 1 hour or so. That's it. On a summit, you have maybe 20 or 30 of those, and it's just like more value. And also, that's how you bring in people together. So you don't really have to be the expert when you're starting.
Right.
That's pretty cool. So you can just like build your brand by association, and then go from there pretty much.
Yeah, I'm one of your students, so I just hosted my virtual summit a little while ago. And one of the things that I really like about this medium is that you're able to curate the content. Like, it's a free event, but unlike, like you said, like a podcast or a blog post, maybe you're able to deliver content over time, over the course of the event, but creating an experience on a very specific topic. So people are able to get a full education on that thing that they want to learn about. So I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so what would you say are the benefits of hosting a virtual summit? I know you mentioned some of them just in your
Yeah.
last answer, but what would you say are the primary benefits of having one?
I mean, I've been serving people a lot, so what they really want from it. But I can say what you're getting from it usually, it's obviously the email list. You're growing that rapidly. So that would be hard to do with just a podcast, for example. So that's how it's a little bit similar to like a webinar, because you're still growing your list with a webinar, but with more people that can possibly promote for you, and that you can grow. You can build up a bigger email list from this pretty quickly actually, and then you can obviously create a product pretty fast. Maybe you're not an expert, so I mean, if you're not an expert, you should not create a product. Pretty much that's what I say. You can do a summit, because then you don't have to be the expert. You can curate content, interview experts, and then you will learn from them, and you'll become kind of an expert in someone else's eyes, because you know a little bit more than them, and that's really what an expert is. So maybe you are not an expert before the summit, but after the summit you are an expert, and maybe some of your summit attendees' eyes. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits. People don't think about that, but that's really, if you're starting out, that's just, you should be really excited about that for sure. And then the relationships with the speakers and maybe other people involved. If you're putting together a great summit, and they see the work that goes into it, like you, Sonia, you did amazing with your summit. I mean, Seth Godin even raved about it. That's really credibility you can get from doing it. Whatever results you get, you still have that credibility from the speakers and building this up. So I'm sure if you're doing another summit, maybe in the future, you can reach back out to Seth, and I'm sure he will be more willing to even participate. I mean,
Right.
because you did such a great job. So that's a big benefit. And also what happens afterwards, if you leverage the momentum, you can, get featured on bigger publications because you have something to offer. And also, keep building the relationships with speakers, so you form these rewarding partnerships. I think that's what I've done really well. I also see that from a lot of students. They're kind of talking to speakers, and maybe they are on a similar level, so they can actually promote each other, which is really cool. Afterwards, you have an email list asset, and you promote them as well.
Very cool. Very cool. So launching a summit is a big undertaking, and I know I got a lot of questions from people whenever I was getting started promoting mine about just how it works, how to pull it off. Do you think that this is something that someone can do as a beginner? Like, is there a certain level of experience that you say someone needs to have before beginning to try to execute a virtual summit?
Yeah, I mean, you will for sure be more challenging to do it if you have no experience. I'm not going to say it's going to be the easiest thing you've done, but it also is going to be very rewarding if you follow through. I have some people in my program, they have no tech experience. Yes, it's going to take them a little bit longer. I mean, that's okay. And they're also aware of that. Anything they do online would actually take time, because they have no experience going into it. Whether they try to start, do an online course, it would be the same tools pretty much you would need to learn. It's just a little different how you do the summit. So yes, it would take them a little bit longer, but with that being said, they can still grow their email list quickly. I mean, I had some people in my program, I'm just excited for them to launch because I know when they do that, their summits are great and they have a message to share with their summit. It's just like some things are challenging with the tech, etc. But I'm, always in VSM, I'm trying to help them out. I have tutorials, constantly adding more and more for that. So I really try to serve for those as well. Yes, if you have, like you, Sonia, for example, you had, obviously some experience with it, it's going to be a little bit easier for you to figure out the email marketing, all this stuff, and maybe you can launch a little bit faster. I mean, that's it. I don't think I think it's something you can do at any time. It's
right.
just that it's going to take you a little bit longer if you don't have the tech experience.
Right, but you don't have to be an expert in your niche before you're starting, because this kind of propels you to be able to have that status.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's one of the benefits. If you're not an expert, you think, okay, I'm going to start this kind of online brand and I'm going to sell courses, stuff like that. Think again, because if you're not feeling like you're an expert, it's going to be very hard for you to sell your course. But if you do a summit, you don't have to be the expert, as I talked about. You don't have to. You can just bring other experts together, other influencers in your space, interview them. You probably, would love to talk to some of the influencers and learn from them. And this is actually a good excuse to do so on a virtual summit, because a lot of them are very generous with their time, actually, and they want to give back. And you don't have to be someone who's been in it for years to be able to interview one of the top influencers. You definitely don't. And then you build your brand by associating your name with theirs. I mean, now you've been on, Seth Godin was on your summit. Now people see that. That's amazing brand building.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. All right, so I can imagine that a number of people are saying, well, okay, summits, they may work in healthcare, they may work in business, but they may not work for my business, for my specific niche. Have you heard this question quite a bit? Will a summit work for my niche? An insert niche here.
Yes, I mean, I hear this all the time. That's why I actually put together this, I put together a guide with 50 successful virtual summit examples. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously it works in online marketing, online business. That's pretty clear. It works in the health and fitness niche. Even if it's crowded in that niche, I think if you can go narrow and go more, be very specific, her fellow student, Steph, she did with the Women's Strength Summit. She went very specific. And I think that's why she found, amazing success with that, getting almost 20,000 people sign up and over $60,000 in sales. I think that's one of the reasons. And then, relationships you're building there as well. I think that matters a lot too. But you definitely don't have to have all that in place.
For sure, for sure. All right, well, let's take a little bit of a step back. Well, you just mentioned Steph, and she's one of your students. Now, you've had a number of great case studies of some of your students who've done really well. But can you talk a little bit about what a summit did for you in your business?
Yeah, I mean, before I did my summit, it was, I had about 1,000 subscribers. That was from 18 months. 18 months of blogging, writing epic guides, doing my podcast interviews. I had over 40 interviews I've done with people, which was great for the relationship building. It didn't grow my business that much, and didn't generate that much revenue. So then I did the summit, the branding summit, and I got almost 3,000 people sign up and $20,000 in profit. So that really enabled me to quit my job and move abroad. And then it's kind of what you do with it, right? If I would have just taken it easy after the summit, I wouldn't be here today. I mean, now I live in Barcelona, I travel a lot, live abroad, but it wouldn't have been that way if I haven't leveraged it, like getting featured on bigger publication. I used the summit as a springboard, whatever you call it, to kind of get out there and becoming the #1 affiliate for many promotions, stuff like that, when it was really targeted for my audience. So I always promote something that my audience would love to hear about. I didn't really have my own program even at the time. Now I have my flagship program, Virtual Summit Mastery, but before I didn't really have that. I had a pilot, but I promoted Ramit Sethi. I promoted some other people like Selena Sue. I earned a lot of money from that because it was very specific, and that was after my virtual summit. In January of 2015, earned $40,000 just from promoting things that was really specific to my audience. They wanted this, and I was obviously blown away. I was spending some time in Cabo at the time because I needed how it is after a summit. I think you did the same. You need a little bit of relaxation, and I took a few weeks off, but at the same time you have your asset with your email list. So that's what I shared with my audience, relevant things, and they bought. I was just blown away when that happened. That was a big aha moment for me.
Very cool, very cool. It's nice to be able to see whenever you implement a certain strategy that if you latch onto it and really milk it and get all the value out of it, it can really transform your business. So that's super cool. All right, so what would you say are the 3 keys to success for people executing a summit?
First of all, you gotta be clear about your expectations. I think first of all, like if you might see Steph, you might see Chandler, they're getting amazing results, right? But also you have to look at it from the standpoint, okay, where were they when they started a little bit? Like Chandler, he had 12,000 subscribers when he started. Okay, that's going to be a little bit easier. He had more to invest into it. But if you go in with it, like, okay, I'm going to get around maybe 1,000 to a few thousand subscribers, depending on the industry. I'm going to get a few thousand to maybe 5 figures in revenue. Then it's going to be, you set the expectations. You're not like expecting this 6-figure, miracle to happen. Like when you have $100 to invest, that's not going to work. It's not like with anything. You have to invest to actually make money. That's the first, set the expectations clear. Like you're going to have a goal for it, whether that's like growing your list with 1,000 to a few thousand people, that's fine. I think that's what most people want. I wanted to grow my list. I didn't set a revenue goal. Chandler didn't set a revenue goal. So that's kind of the first thing, kind of expectations or goal. And then if you can go narrow, that's kind of the second thing I would do. Don't go broad with your summit. It's just too many of those, and they don't do that well. Unless you're, a big name, maybe you can do a broader summit because you have the audience for it. But when you're starting out, you don't want to do that because it's gonna take you a lot longer if at all you will position yourself as an expert. If you can go specific in that market, you will be the expert faster. That's just clear. You just talk about this topic all the time, and then people will see you as the expert. Even if you maybe started out with this summit, that was your first thing you did, you can still build expertise and provide some value to an audience. So that's the second thing. I think the third thing I would do is to be really clear with my speakers and affiliates and build that relationship, not based on a transactional approach, but rather a long-term approach. I think that's what I would do. A lot of summit hosts, they simply just want them to share, and I do too. I want people to share. I'm doing a launch now. I want people to share it, but it's not like I'm gonna like push them. If they don't want, that's okay, right? But I'm asking them. I think that's okay. You gotta be clear. You're gonna say, okay, I provide all the stuff for them so they can share. But at the same time, if they can't, that's okay. Because if you really want to build a relationship with that person, it's okay if that happens over time. It doesn't have to happen over this week or 3-week period. If you're like crunch of time and you only want this person on board because they have a list of, let's say, 10,000 to 20,000 people and they can blast their list about it, that's not the way to build a relationship. You know what I mean? So I think that's what I would say with the tips for anyone considering this.
Well, I really like that you listed goal setting as your #1 and making sure that you set expectations, because I think a lot of times whenever people see some of the success stories, they go straight to what that is and they don't take into account any of the other considerations that go into it. So yeah. people tend to start with inviting speakers, and that's why their summits usually flop, because they also speakers don't they can sense that it's not very well planned, and they might get more rejections because of it. If they take the time
the foundation, as I call it, like in the very beginning, to like get clear first, goal setting in the planning stage and really defining your profitable virtual summit theme or idea. Then as you get into inviting speakers, it'll be a breeze to get speakers on board. It's not going to be that hard.
For sure, for sure. All right, so you mentioned some of the mistakes. You mentioned just kind of one of the mistakes that you see people making. Can you go through maybe a couple of 3 or so of the top mistakes people make when they're planning a virtual summit, particularly their first one, I'm sure?
Yeah. So one mistake I see a lot. I mean, I mentioned one mistake. That's kind of not being clear with your speakers and affiliates, and that can be simply with the promotion them to promote whenever they like. And I'm not requiring them to promote. Like, you're not putting it in a speaker contract, but you're not gonna get people to promote if you don't ask. So you still have to ask, and you have to start a little bit in advance for your promotion. Like with speaker, maybe you have to let them know in advance. Maybe you started 2 weeks before, but just like you cannot come to them like a week before and say, hey, you're gonna promote this. You have to like let them know in advance because they are busy. So I think that's one thing I would do. And another thing is you gotta have a good design for your summit. It's gonna be appealing for people. I think that's very important too. I see a lot of crappy summits out there. That's kind of what I'm trying to change with my students and the approach I take. Like, you can really see that if it's a student of VSM or the school I take, then usually it looks a little bit better than other summits. This kind of banner putting themselves up there. I don't know people like. You might have seen those when they have their own face up on the banner and they have like I hate those. I don't like it. I think that's not the way to do it. You don't typically see that for an event. Like, think about it this way. What do offline events do? Do they put themselves up on the banner usually?
No.
Unless it's like Tony Robbins. I don't even know if Tony Robbins does that. But that they don't do that. They have like the speaker faces. And I think I saw in the health niche, they were kind of doing that, and I took some ideas from it. But I think you're going to have a nice design, and there's some tools for that for sure to kind of get that. You don't have to be the designer. I think you did it mostly yourself actually and got that up and running. So that's number 2. Design is important. Let's see if I can think about third. I have a lot of mistakes actually people make. I think another thing is also that they don't follow, a proven system. They're trying to kind of piece it together. Like, you can listen to a lot of interviews. You can go out there and read blog posts, and that's kind of what I did, honestly. So I looked at other summits, outside my niche, and I saw a little bit what they were doing. And I spent a lot of time there because I didn't have the education. I didn't even have any blog posts, any content for free. I didn't have this cheat sheet you can download for free. I didn't have that stuff. So I had to kind of go out there, sign up for a lot of summits and figure it out. But I think the important thing is, if you can do it, and if you're going to invest the time and energy to put together a summit, having a proven step-by-step system, it just helps you. You kind of, why learn from maybe different blog posts out there when you don't know if they actually walk the talk, rather than seeing someone who has a proven track record. I think that's the most important thing. I think people see better results that way.
Right. So for me, putting together my summit was like a 3-4 month process, but I had your framework to go by. So if I would have tried to figure out how to run a summit by doing it, like piecing a bunch of other things together, it would have easily taken me 5-6 months, and it's still I still might have had some misinformation.
Yeah, you had the checklist too. You have a checklist in the program as well, which is very easy. I'm improving on that all the time as I'm getting feedback from my students. But honestly, that's just like checking off as you're getting things done. Yes, there's a lot of things to get done, but you're getting confidence, to check this off, and you like work yourself down the checklist pretty much as you're going through the modules in the program or the steps in that cheat sheet. So yeah, you can piece a lot of things together, but you might actually make other mistakes along the way. That's the main thing. I've been trying to do that before myself, and I also made mistakes from my first summit that now I know that I definitely don't make that again. I want to help other people to avoid those. Also, I have a blog post even on my site which are more mistakes. You can go check it out as well. I think it's like 5 or 7 mistakes on there, so you can check that out too.
Very cool. All right. So a virtual summit is a great strategy to build your list rapidly, establish yourself as a niche. as an expert within your field, and you can even make some sales along the way. But what are your thoughts on how people should be considering doing a virtual summit in the context of a larger content strategy? Because it shouldn't just be one event and then like you're done.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that question, by the way. That's great because like you're spending a lot of time with your virtual summit, but think about it, as you said, from the long term. I mean, one thing is that you're building relationships, and that's fun. If you like to connect with people, you'll enjoy doing a summit. If you don't, I mean, I don't think it's the best strategy for you, to be honest, because you
Right.
need to connect with a lot of people when you're putting together a summit. When we talk about the content, you're creating a lot of content. And I'm not even talking about you necessarily doing it. Actually, you just have to be great at, getting the information out of the speakers, like interviewing them, researching the speakers so you know what questions to ask. I mean, even if you're not, don't see yourself as an interviewer, maybe you can even have presentations. I mean, I've seen summits like that where simply ask them, hey, do you have a great presentation on this topic? I'm doing this event. And then you can maybe even get them to do presentations so you don't have to interview them, which kind of, they create all the content for you essentially. And then after the event, you can repurpose that into maybe have small episodes on a podcast. You can have market the summit. You can have a book. I mean, I'm sure maybe I think that's what you're doing a little bit with your summit. You can write guest posts. I mean, there's a lot of ways to repurpose. I mean, the list goes on and on what you can do with it, honestly. You can set it up evergreen. You can do a lot of cool things there to like maximize for just having it out there. I mean, you've created this content once. Why not, put it in different mediums, so to speak.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's never like it's great for repurposing a lot of content. Like you say, you spend 3 months on it. You want to make sure that you can get as much value out of it as possible.
Totally. Yeah, transcribe it, like do some cool things, and then you can even bundle. I mean, you can even create like a membership of your summit if you want to do more of a ongoing education. Maybe that, I mean, you saw it was really popular what you did with your summit. Maybe you can continue that education. I've seen a few summits do that and like just validate maybe an idea for a membership program or something like that where they have on a recurring basis people pay every month.
Very cool. All right, so what are your thoughts on running summits on an ongoing basis? Because I think once somebody learns how to do it, they spend a couple of months, they invest in the process, and they're like, okay, yeah, like this is good. But they're gonna get like the summit bug.
Yeah, right. I mean, I see from actually a lot of my students, they're doing that because they realize maybe when they go into it, they don't really think about it that way. They just say, okay, I want to grow my list. I want to do, build some relationships and so on. That's great. But then they see it from a business model standpoint. I think that's when it really starts to kick in. Okay, I can do this maybe once or twice per year, and I can grow my list pretty quickly, over that time. And I can also generate some revenue, but also build these relationships because it's easier for a speaker or a partner to come in to promote a free event rather than your course that they have no clue about what it is, right? Your course might be amazing, but if they haven't taken it, if they have no experience, it's going to be a little bit difficult to get them on board the first time to promote it. I mean, I know from experience because people don't know about it. And if you're getting them for a summit, then they see, oh, wow, this is an amazing event. You become friends with them. Then they might, promote you down the road. You can do joint venture partnerships and so on. I think that's, one reason to just do them often. I mean, maybe once a year, twice a year, depending on the industry. Even if I have like Steph, for example, we talked about her summit, the Women's Strength Summit. I mean, for her, it's perfect to do this annually, for example, because she wants to make sure this is the go-to event because she was so successful, right? And now it's going to be hard for someone to steal that, from her if she just continues to run them. Same with the Webinar Mastery Summit guys, John and Michael. They also did great, and they can also do it on an ongoing basis because I think they were also, one of the first, if not the first, summit on webinars.
Well, one thing I was just going to say about that is like you can think about doing multiple events kind of in the same way that people do offline events. So like once, they have the first annual and they have the first, offline conference, it's a success. So then they begin with the second annual, the third annual, and, you're able to continue to build upon it with new information.
That's what I see too. And also, some people validate an offline event with a virtual summit because they say, wow, that's kind of what Steph actually might be doing. She might actually host some offline events because people in her audience were asking her to put that together. And you can just imagine,
Yeah.
how expensive it is to put together an offline event compared to an online event. So you can, gather your audience when you have built that up in an online event. When you have the budget for it, when you have making some more money in your business, then you can go the route of doing even offline event, if that makes sense for you and what you're doing.
It does, totally. Oh, this has been great, Navid, chatting with you. I've even gotten some additional ideas
Awesome.
for how to apply this in my business. Any parting words of wisdom for people who are considering doing a virtual summit adding that on to their strategy for their business?
Yeah, I mean, I've said this many times. Like, there's a lot of things you can do. Like, you can do podcasts, you can do blogging, you can, webinars and all this. I do that too. Honestly, it's part of what I do for my marketing. But the most underrated marketing tactic available to businesses today, actually, it's not. I didn't invent that. It's like from one of the biggest content marketing websites in the world, convinceandconvert.com. They said that virtual summits, that's the most underrated marketing tactic available to businesses today. And a lot of business owners, they're simply not utilizing them, but there are a few that does really well with them. I mean, we have some big name influencers who are using them, and also my students, graduates from VSM, they are doing it really well, getting success, and you just have to jump in there. I mean, I get sometimes people say, oh, there's so many summits out there now. Is that really true? Maybe just because you're in a specific niche, right? Maybe you're getting more summits, but how many webinars and how many blogs, how many podcasts are out there? I don't think you should worry about that. There's always a way to stand out and find kind of your unique hook, and making sure you don't even have to have the same speakers on board all the time. I think that's a mistake people make. They go after the same regular speakers. You don't even have to have the same A-listers on board. You can go for more up-and-comers, and your summit can be amazing with that. It's just people have the wrong perception and then it's it looks the same like another summit. If it's a very popular market, like health and fitness, they tend to go after the same speakers all the time, for example, or the online marketing space. Also it can be the case, but there's so many people to go about.
Right.
I think it shouldn't be an issue. And yeah, the last thing I would say, virtual summits, I've seen it works in literally any niche where they have an online type of audience. If that's the case, you can do a summit because that's just a way to market, and it's a business model, and it proven to work.
Thank you, Navid. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with me chatting today.
Awesome. Thanks so much.